This afternoon, what we have designed this part of the day to be about is really to start focusing in a little bit on the network and what we've been doing and how we can start thinking about the contributions that you might be able to make, because one of the things that we're really clear about, and Geeta has explained this morning, is that actually the network is a collection of expertise and individuals that exist within the community, within this room and beyond. So we're really keen to start to use this morning to generate ideas and capture thoughts that you have about how the network might be able to take forward some of the agendas that we've heard about this morning and other things that might be on your mind. And I'd like to also sort of talk about what we've achieved so far so that we can start thinking about where our plan for the coming year might be. Just need to find my clicker. Okay, so if you had the chance to look at the screens during lunchtime, you would have seen quite a lot of photographs and slides that had headings of meetings. And one of the things that I really struggled with was that since we last met a year ago, we've actually done loads. I can't explain to you how much we've kind of been involved in a big way, or we've kind of nuanced with a bit of a tweak and put our hand up and said, what about PPN? So there's been lots and lots going on, and it was really difficult to think about how do I balance telling you that with actually kind of giving you a good overview. So the compromise that Geeta and I came to was that we would give you a flavour of some of the things through the slideshow at dinner time. So hopefully you've seen some of those, the groups, the special interest groups that have been supported by the network to set up, things like the PWP masterclasses, the PWP professional network, the IAPT leadership programme, a leadership and innovation group. We're at the moment planning to convene a newly qualified clinical psychologist group. What else do we have? Older People's Champions group, Learning Disability and IAPT. We've had a 3-day event that we've been able to bring up from London and host. And then alongside that, we've got the ability to start setting up task and finish groups. And those task and finish groups are an opportunity for us to pull out a particular theme or question or topic and spend a bit of time on it. And the first group that we've convened around that has been around continuing professional development. So we have a continuing professional development group that's just started meeting, that's multi-professional. So we've got clinical psychology, we've got PWPs on there, we've got counselling, and we've got CBT. But what we're interested in is what are the issues that across the professions are affecting access to CPD. So that's been really interesting for me, because I've learnt loads about the way that CPD is funded and commissioned, and actually how as a workforce we don't actually get a lot of access to the CPD that's out there, and when we do, we don't necessarily find it that applicable to what we need. So that group is taking forward some of those questions so that we can start to influence the wider system and the commissioning and feed it back into the universities. So Gregor's kind of points about there's a report coming out, there are implications for public health training for practitioners that are used to working in a more individualised way. You know, that's the kind of thing that we can start flagging up and saying, oh, that's really interesting, you know, this is quite innovative, it's hitting a number of buttons, and actually it's about developing the workforce. So there's been lots going on, and that's just a flavour. You may have seen some of your photographs on there from last year. There were photographs from events that we've had, and also the conference last year. So there's been lots and lots happening, and what I've discovered is that that's the nature of building a network. You know, if there isn't really a manual that tells you how to do this, and a lot of it is around having good people around you and being open to ideas and taking up opportunities. And I think also having a public-facing image. So I just sort of wanted to flag back up the website, because we're going to be reviewing that in a few weeks. It's got lots of stuff in there that has developed over the year, and I'll be going through it and kind of housekeeping it. But one of the things that has been really, really apparent to me is the use of social media and the use of the website as a conduit through which we can inform people about what's going on, but also to promote what's happening and engage new membership through having online registration, through the e-bulletin, that really is working. And I'll show you a few facts and figures a little bit later, but we've actually been very, very successful. I was laid down the challenge by Neil McLaughlin, whose name you heard earlier this morning, who's been really instrumental in this network, and a number of other mental health things. And he said, he gave me the target of having 1,000 people signed up to the network in a year's time, and we've got 1,200. So that's kind of like, we made that target, so that's brilliant. And out of a workforce of what we think is around 4,000 isn't bad. Proportionately, that's not bad. So the reach in terms of the network is really, is growing already. So just to remind you, when we started off last year talking about the aims of the network, we were very clear that the network is multidisciplinary. This is about leaving professional differences, professional kind of turf wars sometimes to one side, and thinking about what is it that actually brings us all together. What are the things that are important to all of us? That whilst we're thinking about what our differences are, we tend to neglect. And the network is about focusing on those things so that we can start to engage much more actively and proactively in the current agenda around healthcare and the way that things are transforming. And you know, Devo Mank has been mentioned already, and I think that, you know, these are times that the network, I think, will really become important, not just to us but to other people who are looking for a steer. And that's what we're finding already, that now that we exist, people are starting to come to us and say, do you know, I don't know how to contact this person. Have you got a contact? And lo and behold, the network is responding, which is really, really important. So I'm just looking at Lee, because that's sort of like a recent example, really, isn't it? Is that Geraldine Strathdy, mental health lead, Department of Health, came to Lee, BPS, and said, DCP, and said, what do you know about psychology and in A&E and liaison services? Because of course A&E is big on the NHS mandate. You know, these are the sorts of strategic things we need to be having an opinion and contributing to. So Lee came to me, said, can we put something out through the network? And we've done that, and I think we've had about responses from at least 10 different services. And that's just the power of the network. So what we're going to do is collate those. They'll go to Geraldine. But already we've got the potential to bring together those people locally to look at A&E, liaison psychiatry issues in the North West and be proactive. So that's kind of the network responding to questions, and then us thinking about what do we need to do next and linking it to the agenda. So it's already proving to be very useful to people. So the important things to us that we all agree on are around promoting psychological well-being, being safe and effective, high quality education and training that we all need access to, influencing commissioning workforce planning, and this is becoming increasingly important. And I do think that as we start moving into greater devolution, kind of where the wisdom sits on these things is going to be really key. And I think within the network we hold a lot of wisdom from the grassroots that doesn't necessarily usually get a voice. And I think the power of the network is that I think that we need to be outward looking. So we're looking to answer other people's questions, prod them, and kind of say, what about mental health? I think I did that at the stakeholder meeting yesterday, Claire, didn't I? So I kind of make it my mission to go to these meetings where people never mention mental health, and it's my challenge to every time put up my hand and say, what about? So we need to be outward thinking, but also thinking inwards and looking inwards to how we make the community useful to each other and worth being involved in, waiting for those opportunities. And I think that's what we've been spending a lot of time trying to do this year, is to identify the special interest groups, give you support, encourage you, and also bring the chairs of those special interest groups into the Workforce Board that we've now developed. And through that community, what we hope to do is share innovation, enthuse each other whilst times are difficult, and look for those opportunities to innovate and spot might be a Forerunner Fund bid in that. How do we join that one up? This is the kind of thing that comes out of a community practice. So we've been working on those topics. And I just wanted to let you know that we don't sit alone. We're now well and truly located within the Centre for Professional Workforce Development, alongside the 3 other networks that are also Health Education North West funded. And that's been really, really important. It's given us a real strength, because that's allowed us to do things like jointly fund some initiatives. So those of you that have seen and signed up for the leadership training that's been offered, there's been a one-day introduction to leadership training that's been offered, and there's a more substantial 12-month package of training for people that are in current leadership roles. Those trainings have come out of joint funding because we've identified that they're issues that are relevant to across the network. So we've got real strength across the network, and we're being asked to look for opportunities to sort of cross-fertilise ideas and innovate. So thinking about the wider scale is really important. And one of the things that I did this year alongside Geeta was we did some training that's called large-scale change training, which is really, it sounds sort of very grand and a bit onerous, a bit scary. And I don't want to tell you a lot about it, but I did want to put up the list of descriptors of what effective large-scale change involves, because this, for me, really kind of summed up what I was trying to grasp in terms of, what is this network thing? Because it's very difficult to identify what your clear goals are at the beginning. A lot of it is emergent. You need to be strategic, but you also need to get the helicopter view, but then you need to be able to kind of zoom in on things. So hopefully what we've been doing is starting to work in this way. And the emergent themes are the things that are starting to link into the NHS mandate. So we're really keen to make ourselves strategic. But this multiple of things, lots and lots, is really what we've been engaged with. Me and Geeta have been doing lots and lots, and then coming back to the steering group, which has guided us through that and has now enabled us to develop the Workforce Board, which is what we're going into with 2015. So this is my best attempt to try to describe what is now the map. I think last year I talked about needing a map, and the map just got incredibly busy and chaotic. So I've tried to distill out where I see the Psychological Professions Network sitting within the strategic framework of the NHS. And I show you this because, importantly, what we have is... that's not going to work. The Psychological Professions Network sits in the middle, and I do really think that we're kind of uniquely placed to have a voice into Health Education North West. We're being asked about workforce planning ideas. The commissioners are wanting to know what kind of expertise that they can plug into, and we also are unique in that we have you are us. Really, you are the community. This is the community of practice that feeds the network, and we've been able to, through that community practice, developing the workforce, the special interest groups, we've been able to develop the Workforce Board. And for those of you that haven't met anybody from the Workforce Board yet, the list of Workforce Board members is in your pack. And you'll see that we've got representatives from most of the professions at the moment. But over the coming year, we will be looking for where the gaps are. So there's some obvious ones like psychosis and severe and enduring mental illness. We don't have somebody on the workforce board that specifically kind of talks to that agenda. Equally, kind of prison health, that's another area that has come up. So we're going to be developing that in order that workforce board becomes the engine room, really, of the network, that they access yourselves through various routes and they come to the network to be able to give us ideas, to answer questions that come down, and for us to think about where do we go next to influence things. So that's really about thinking about you as the community of practice. Without you, without your ideas, without your input, without your enthusiasm, that workforce board and the network doesn't really have anything to go on. So we're really keen to keep you engaged, and if you have ideas about things that you'd like to do that the network might be able to support you with, then just come to me and talk. We can talk about it. Anything that we can do to create that, to support you. What's happening there? Oh dear, sorry, I put an animation on this, it's going to be a bit long. So this is, I guess, what I'm describing in terms of the community of practice is that I see it really as the workforce board being the engine room and at the centre with task finish groups, special interest groups, responding to strategy, getting researchers in, and thinking about how do we look for partnerships, like with public health, like with other parts of the health service, that linking those all together, bringing them into the network as a hub, and using the workforce board as a way of distilling down what's coming out of that community of practice is the model that we're using. Ooh. Okay, so with that model, some of the very basic facts and figures are we have over 1,200 members and growing, and I would really kind of like to emphasise that if you can just get one other person to sign up, that's great, because there is strength in numbers. The more visible we are, the more Health Education North West thinks it's getting bang for its buck. And as with the example of liaison psychiatry or A&E liaison, what we have is a growing network of people to grow on. So we become more useful and more relevant. We get more ideas. The news bulletin is just one thing that you get out of it, and I don't know how many of you look at it every week, but we're actually getting quite a lot of stuff going through that. It's fairly eclectic, we don't edit it at all. There might come a point where we need to, where people start sending us lots, but at the moment our policy is we just push it out. If we receive it, we send it out, and you can decide whether it's relevant. So I think the news bulletin has been something that's been really quite useful, and the great thing about the news bulletin is that it directs people to the news items that are on the website. So it makes people go to the website, and it keeps the website relevant, because we are asked, how many hits are we getting? What did Gregor say? If you treasure it, measure it, and they do that with websites. So we're really showing that the web media is really making a difference, and that the investment in that we need is really important. So the other thing that I've mentioned is that the workforce board, our kind of engine room, is now established. We had our first meeting in February, and that comprises of the chairs of all of the special interest groups that we've identified exist already or we've supported to develop. So there's about membership of about 25 people. Very flattened hierarchy, clinical psychologists with PWPs, with counsellors. We've got health psychology in there, which is really interesting because linking into medicine and psychology is an area that we want to look at exploiting this year, thinking about how that link can be made. And we really are sort of thinking about how we work together and how those workforce board members bring in information from yourselves. So have a look at that list, see who the reps are, and if you have an idea, if there's something that you want the network to know, find out choose who is the best person to bring that to that workforce board meeting, so that we can have a think about getting things on the agenda that are relevant to you. Just a kind of snapshot of the bigger picture. We've been doing lots and lots in the middle, lots of little things, but we're also got an eye on the bigger picture. So the most important thing is that we are completely unique. There is no other network like this in the country. And we've just been invited to meet with the chair of Health Education England, I think, who's coming up in May, who wants to hear about the network and wants to meet members of the network, particularly trainees. So I'll be coming out to kind of ask for people to help us with that. But I think that's an indication of Health Education England are thinking, actually, we don't engage with psychological professions that well, and might this network be a model through which we could start spreading kind of the voice through other parts of certainly the north. We're talking across the north. We're talking to the northeast, aren't we? They're interested in what we're doing, and also Yorks and Humber. So, there's interest across the north. We're linked up with the BPS and the DCP, the DCP. BABCP have been along to our CBT consultation event. They've taken away some actions. Counselling BACP are very actively engaged. So we're bringing in the professional organisations, professional groups, so that we can pick up and put back to them issues that might be professional, so we don't get distracted from our kind of joint agenda, which is this sort of joint voice. And we're really keen to build national connections and profiles. So getting people like Greg are coming up, hearing about what's happening nationally and thinking about what that means locally. How can we help nationally is certainly something that we're really keen to continue. Oh, blimey, I stole my own thunder there. So I'm aware that's a real kind of broad brush stroke illustration of what's been going on. But if you hold anything in your mind, I would say try and hold this kind of this conduit model that I've kind of drawn out, because that's how I see what we're trying to do, and where the network sits. And we really do sit very strategically. The workforce planners do want to come to us with questions, and I'm very clear that this isn't my bandwagon. I don't intend to be in this job indefinitely. This is about thinking about how can we make sure that something sustainable continues, so that when I'm not here or want to do something else, or Geeta decides she wants to do something else, that it continues and grows. So we're really keen to get involvement from you. We really, really genuinely genuinely make that point. One of the things that Geeta and I have been doing that's been a really, really enjoyable thing and a very steep learning curve is that we got the opportunity, and it was suggested by the Director of Education and Quality, Jed Burns, who now is Director for across the north of England, Health Education England. We went to Jed and we said, look, we've got the network, we're doing really well in the North West, but we're really keen for other people to know about what we're doing. What do you think? And Jed's quite interesting because he's a surgeon by background, but he really gets psychological health and mental health. And he said, well, you're talking to the converted here, I get it, but I still go to meetings and people don't even, mental health, psychology, psychological approach, it doesn't even register. It's not on people's radars. So what I need is something that I can direct people to, just to raise awareness that gets them thinking about what mental health and psychological approaches might mean to them. So we got permission to go away and think about how we might do that, and we lighted upon doing an animation. So what I want to show you is the product of that. It's about 3.5 minutes long, and what we see this as being, this is really the centrepiece of our communication strategy for the coming year, and it's already available on YouTube. I've tweeted the link for those of you that tweet, and we're really keen to try and get it out there as much as possible. But we will be building a resource around it in the website so that it's a resource that anybody can use to stimulate debate and to explain about the network. So I'll show you it and then I'll round off.
There are all kinds of psychological professions in the UK, but they don't always speak as a group. And this means they can get pushed into the background. Mental health is essential to every part of our health and well-being. As the World Health Organization says, there's no health without mental health. That's why the Psychological Professions Network was born. We're a new multi-professional network that gives a voice to all psychological practitioners who work with NHS patients. By working with planners and commissioners in the North West, we help raise awareness of how psychological approaches can improve patient care. We also provide a destination that anyone can come to for advice and support about the psychological professions. It's our mission to make sure everyone knows how important psychological health and well-being is in our day-to-day lives, especially in the NHS. For instance, did you know 1 in 5 older people are affected by depression? Nearly half of all adults will experience an episode of depression, or that 20% of children have a mental health problem in any given year. Stigma and old-fashioned ideas are still holding back care, but it doesn't have to be this way. We want to prove how much healthier everyone can be if psychological professionals are involved at the right time. We're working to make sure everyone understands the dual importance of physical and mental health and the relationship between the two, and to help patients have choice and take more control over their psychological treatments. As well as giving advice and sharing ideas through our members, we help clinical research get put into practice and champion clinical excellence. We're also helping to create the next generation of NHS leaders. We support research and innovation, influence health strategy and policy, promote psychological well-being, create links with academic institutions and professional bodies, and promote new ways of learning. Over time, as the network grows, it will respond to ideas and interest from all kinds of places. Becoming a member gets you access to all these things. In the future, in every new healthcare situation, we want people to ask, how do psychological approaches play a role? And know that our knowledge and skills are available for anyone that needs them. You'll find more about what we do, as well as our busy calendar of events, discussions and consultations, on our website. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter.
We were, you wouldn't believe the amount of sweat and tears that went over that script. And it's interesting, as soon as you've made it, there are things that you would do differently. So I guess that what we've learnt from that is that, you know, there's opportunity to do other things like this. And this is one of the beauty of the network, that we're kind of given the permission to think creatively in order to communicate and engage with the community of practice. But I think particularly the aim of the animation is very much about stimulating thinking in people that haven't maybe thought about it before. I was really mindful of the the statistics and what you were saying, Gregor. That some of it is sort of like going back to, you know, quick hits. How do you make your point? So I really should thank Matt Cook and James Murray, James Munro, who were the animator and the scriptwriter. They were absolutely brilliant, and they worked really, really hard with us to distill lots of this into that. So hopefully we'll get some feedback from you on that through the the rest of the afternoon, but it's something that we really want to make available and send out and start stimulating debate to bring people back to the network as well, and to give you an idea about what you're located in too. So thinking about that as our central strategy, our sort of comms strategy, we've got that as a tool. We want to take it as far and wide as we can to get people thinking. You know, I want, certainly in Health Education North West, my aim is for every meeting that there is to be had, for people to have on the checklist, what about mental health, what about psychology? Because at the moment that question isn't necessarily asked. So it's a bit like, you know, those... what do they call them? You know, they've introduced like flight checklists, haven't they, into surgery, into theatres, medical theatre, where they do operations, and that checklist includes everything that people need to make sure they've thought through or checked before they move into the operation. And I want to get PPN psychological professions on that checklist. That's my aim. So we've got the network, we're very strategically placed, we've got an invitation to kind of talk to people and to go knocking on doors. If they're not asking us in, we can go and knock. And I just sort of wanted to flag up some of the things that are on the horizon. We know there are changes in Manchester. We don't know what that will bring. No doubt it will bring opportunities and challenges, to coin a cliche. But I think the useful thing about the network is that we kind of, in those sorts of changes, a lot of wisdom is lost. And I think that the network has an opportunity to kind of hold the course, really, to hold the line whilst everybody else is kind of working out what they do. I think that we can start sort of being the conduit through which is the link between what's been and what's going, and hopefully drive some of that as well. Thinking about problem solving, coming with ideas. Another example is I got tweeted the other day by Jed, as it happens, who said, what can the PPN do to help with microbiological stewardship, which is antibiotics, a prescription of antibiotics. And I thought, I don't really know about that. But actually, when I thought about it, when you read the stewardship NICE guidelines, there's a whole lot in there around managing relationships with patients, communication skills, and that's the bit that hasn't really been written. They've said it needs to happen, but there's no content. So immediately there's an opportunity for us to offer something. So we're really kind of thinking about how do we make ourselves relevant across healthcare, and thinking outside the box a little bit. So our plans are very much around the communication strategy, making ourselves relevant and knocking on people's doors. We've got we think about public health as being an area that we need to focus on, and also kind of working in the physical mental health area as well, because those two areas are the places that will get us noticed, whilst we're continuing to do the stuff that we do to support the special interest groups and continuing to grow and feed into Health Education North West Education and Workforce Planning through the Workforce Board. So we've got a Workforce Board meeting in April, when what we're going to do is bring together everything that comes out of today from your discussions, the kind of feedback that we have on your ideas. So that will really feed into our planning. We've got ideas. There are things that we have to do, which is about keeping the network promoted and growing. But we're really keen to be kind of informed around where our priorities should be by yourselves, and linking that into the strategic NHS sort of mandate agenda. So that's the kind of that's the techie bit that we have to do. So one of the things that is particularly important is this mantra, parity of esteem. We've got two really good mantras: parity of esteem for mental health and no health without mental health. So we've got those in the animation, and we wanted to focus on promoting parity of esteem through the network's coming year